Well, look, there's another issue which is awful. New South Wales and Victoria have moved to make it an offence to leave home other than for essential purposes. Essential purposes. Work, education, if you can't work remotely, shopping for food, travelling for medical care, or for the care of others and for exercise. Now, in New South Wales, under Section 10 of the Public Health Act, the penalty is imprisonment for 6 months, a fine of up to $11,000 or both, and a further $5,500 each day the offence continues. This is authority gone drunk. You can't, without reasonable excuse, leave your place of residence. Penalty, 6 months in jail, or a fine of $11,000 or both, and a $5,500 fine each day the offence continues. Now, people are entitled to worry about what this all means at a time when there is already too much to worry about. The rules were implemented via regulation in New South Wales, not legislation, which means they weren't debated in Parliament, they weren't subject to possibly sensible amendment. So anybody who's outside their house may only be with one other person, unless they're part of that person's immediate family. The same applies having another person over to your house. And if you're inside, there can only be 2 people gathered in a room. You can leave to go to work if you can't work from home. You can leave to go to school or an educational institution. You can leave to shop for food. You can leave to get medical care. You can leave to exercise, but only if the exercise is done alone or with one other. You can leave if you're fleeing an unsafe home so as to avoid injury. You can leave if you're taking a child to childcare. You can leave to attend a wedding, but you must observe the 5-person limit, or a funeral, but observe the 10-person limit. You can leave if you're moving house or moving between 2 places of residence. You can leave if you're donating blood. You can leave if you're fulfilling legal obligations. You can leave if you're accessing support services like employment or mental health services. You can leave if you are fulfilling parental sharing arrangements of children. You can leave if you're going to a place of worship, but I thought they were closed down. But does this mean I can be questioned by police whenever I may be on the street, even if I'm observing social distancing? Would you and I be required to prove we are outside our home for one or more of the above reasons? If not, are we liable to a fine or imprisonment? Remember, this order under the Public Health Act was not debated in the Parliament. There was no debate. Does this mean if I'm not walking on the street, but I'm in my car, I can be pulled up, asked where I'm going, asked to prove I'm outside my home for one or more of the above reasons, or I could be fined or imprisoned? You can leave your home to purchase essential items. Who decides what's essential? I'm a swimmer. I can't swim because all the pools and beaches are closed. I want to take up jogging. I don't have appropriate footwear. Is a visit to a shoe shop to purchase running shoes essential? Police have reported already been chasing people out of parks and other public spaces. What's the restriction here? Are individuals only allowed to go to parks and public spaces if they're exercising or walking, observing social distancing, of course? Is it no longer acceptable to sit on your own in a park or a public space doing nothing? What about Victoria? The Police Minister, Lisa Neville, today said that if partners don't live together, they aren't allowed to visit one another. Her words, you can't visit your partner for social reasons. Thankfully, Premier Andrews put her in a place and simply said this is not on. But the left love a police state. It's control. This order in New South Wales is by a Liberal government. It should never have been gazetted. It's badly thought out, it's undemocratic, it's hopelessly un-Australian, and it treats us as if we're either all completely stupid or servants of the state. It owes more to Russia than it does to Australia. And the response is out of all proportion to the problem. In a world of 7.7 billion people, there are not 1 million cases of coronavirus. 95%, like that of Peter Dutton, are mild. In 193 countries, there are not 6,000 critical cases. In Australia, there are, rounding out the numbers, 4,500 cases. The death tally, 21. Every death is tragic, but that's 0.41% of all confirmed cases. But if you check the website which provides World Health and death statistics, today's April 1. There have been 3.2 million deaths so far this year from communicable disease. There have already been 121,000 seasonal flu deaths to April 1. 121,000, coronavirus 40,000. There have already been 2.05 million deaths from cancer. There have been 245,000 deaths from malaria. Coronavirus 40,000. 337,000 people have died on the road so far this year worldwide. In the light of these extraordinary restrictions imposed on Australians, it's worth noting George Orwell's observation. In his iconic dystopian novel 1984, Orwell wrote, No one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. An editorial in today's Australian newspaper urges Australian citizens and governments not to become accustomed to their loss of liberty. The editorial argues that governments and their citizens need to remind themselves frequently that these newly introduced restrictions must be temporary. That's correct. Together, we're going to have to remind governments across Australia of this truth. There are some politicians at state level in this country who've forgotten what a liberal society is meant to be about. Coronavirus cannot be allowed to destroy democracy.